All right, everybody. Instant reaction here. Celtics take down the Knicks on a Sunday matinee at the TD Garden, 118 to 105. We're going to get into everything here as well as hit you with our stat of the week and in or out. All that and more coming up next here on Green with Envy. This is a post-game show, so we're live on YouTube. Jump into the chat. You guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. This is a Green with Envy live post-game show. You know, when the Celtics have a big matinee game against the New York Knicks, we gotta do it live. This is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast. And I gotta say, the birthday boy of the podcast, the big 3-6, the Marcus Smart year, the one and only Greg Manakis. Little birthday dub for the kid today from the Celtics. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, 36 feels a little strange. I think I'm officially in my late mid 30s, right?
Yeah, I feel like so this is the question. Is it 37 or is it 38 where you're now officially in your late 30s, right? Like I feel like you got one more year before you have to say late 30s, right? At least one more. And then that 37, 38 is where it kind of teeters. But yeah, man, your ass is getting old. It's getting old, man.
It's getting old. This always reminds me of the Patrice O'Neal sketch where where he's talking about the, I guess bit would be the right word. He's talking about the types of women and how you can rank them. And he's like, you got your ugly ass fine bitches, but you got your fine ass ugly bitches. Like, which one would you rather be? I'm in my mid 30s. I'm in my late 30s. I'm in my early late 30s, my late mid 30s. I don't know where I want to be, but
yeah, late mid 30s, I think is the best way. Yeah, it's the best way to do. By the way, shout out to Patrice O'Neal. That man's a legend. I get very excited every once in a while. His something like an old skit or bit that he has, comes across my Instagram feed. Always enjoy that. But I also enjoy Celtics whooping that ass, which they have done again to the New York Knicks, now 3-0 against the Knicks on the season. Today, Greg, a 118 to 105 victory at the TD Garden. Celtics put it on the Knicks. Now, the Knicks did fight back in this one, kind of reminiscent of the last game where it was Celtics mostly throughout and then an isolated Knicks run that in the last game, I think, cut the lead to 2. Today, they got it down to 4 across the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter. But ultimately, the Celtics proving that they are still on a different tier than this Knicks team. What's the first thing you want to talk about today? Because this is a very well-rounded game for the Celtics overall.
Let's start with like the Knicks side of things and the things that you would be worried about if you were the Knicks. I think the first thing I would be worried about, and you can kind of just go off of what I say here, Mikal Bridges. Man, Mikal Bridges does not look like he belongs on a court with the Boston Celtics. And at the end of the game, Mikal Bridges just getting some buckets so that he doesn't just look like a complete negative. He's a negative 23. Yeah,
ended up with 14. In the last really minute. 6 of it was like real points. The rest of it was all garbage time points.
Yeah, minus 23 on the night for Bridges. They went on their main run in the third quarter with Bridges on the bench. And that if you're a Knicks fan with all you gave up for Mikal Bridges in the offseason, thinking that he's going to be the guy to guard at least one of the Jays and he can't guard anybody on the court, that's a real problem for the Knicks.
Yeah, well, I mean, I said this last game too. I think his offense is just as much of a problem as his defense is in this matchup.
Yeah.
Like he's supposed to be your third guy. He had 11 points in the previous matchup. Like we just said, he had 14 tonight, but like 8 of that was in garbage time. The Celtics took 2 shot clock violations. That's when Mikal Bridges was scoring his points, is when the Celtics were willingly taking shot clock violations in the last minute of the game. And like I was even thinking this as time was winding down the fourth quarter. Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, that's the strength of the Knicks offense is what are you going to do against Brunson and Towns? And the Celtics in the first half, specifically with Towns, really kind of put the clamps on him, and he didn't have any points in the first quarter. Had towards the end of the second quarter, got a couple of points, and then third quarter, fourth quarter, Brunson and Towns were the reason that the Knicks climbed back into this game. And they both had monster end of the thirds into the beginning of the fourth before the Celtics went back on a run. And you need that third guy to supplement you. And, listen, Josh Hart had 20 points in this game tonight. He's the type of guy that's really interesting, where I think Josh Hart hurts them so much offensively that they don't have DiVincenzo in that spot offensively, because KP can just sag off him and just cause so much damage in the paint. But on the converse, Josh Hart feels like an Indiana Pacer in the sense that the way he plays when he gets in transition, that's kind of some of the pacing and athleticism that can sometimes give the Celtics trouble. But he's the only guy that's really going to do that on this team. So Josh Hart gets you 20 points, but that's, if you're looking at this from a big picture perspective from the Knicks, that's not going to get it done. Mikal Bridges was 4 or 5 draft picks to come in here and be that third guy that can be a little bit more than a 3-and-D guy, and you're not getting the 3, you're not getting the D, you're getting nothing from Mikal Bridges right now. You're 100% spot on. That's the biggest glaring issue to me, other than, some depth stuff that we could talk about, but they knew that was going to be an issue. Mikal Bridges from the on-court perspective, easily the biggest issue in this matchup for the Knicks.
Yeah, and OG was coming back from injury today, so I don't want to put too much into his offensive performance. He clearly wasn't in rhythm. If I'm a Knicks fan, I'm looking for some silver linings, right? So that third quarter is obviously something that we can finally point to as a Knicks fan and say, hey, we can at least compete with this team when we try hard, because it hasn't looked like they've even wanted to compete with the Celtics at all. They didn't want to try to compete with the Celtics. But OG Anunoby's defense on Jason Tatum in the third quarter, I think, is at least some silver lining that you can draw, because Tatum has just been cooking them in the pick and roll.
Yeah.
And there was probably like a 5-minute stretch during that run where OG and Towns, to his credit, played the pick and roll with a little bit more gusto. They were putting 2 on the ball, and OG was just not willingly getting caught up on that screen. He was really fighting over the screen. So if I'm a Knicks fan, that's something that I'm looking at, is just, okay, how can we guard Tatum in the high pick and roll? Because that's been our kryptonite thus far this year. But then on the other side of the court, one of the things the Celtics were doing really well, Brunson in the pick and roll, right? When you have OG Anunoby on a wing and you've got Mikal Bridges in a corner, and Brunson's running the pick and roll on the right side of the court to the center of the court, coming to his left hand, the Celtics were pinching off of the wings, right? So if you can imagine, Brunson's got the ball left hand, gets a high pick and roll from Towns, right? He's coming to his left hand towards the middle of the court. Jason Tatum's covering Anunoby, and he's basically just planted there at the elbow off of the wing, 15 feet away from OG Anunoby. And they're working on the backside, hoping that if the pass goes to Anunoby, it's just one more pass to the corner, right? And the Celtics did such a good job of scrambling on the backside there. And if they decided, because the one offensive adjustment you can really make there is the moment Tatum gets to the elbow, maybe you set a down screen to the corner, or maybe you back cut on Tatum, the 45 cut from the wing. But even when that happened, the Celtics, Luke Kornet, Kristaps Porzingis did such a good job recognizing that guy in the wing wasn't there pinching onto the elbow, and he was able to step up and just put another body and length on Jalen Brunson. And I thought they did such a good job. But if I'm a Knicks fan, I'm really worried about the Celtics' complete disregard for any of our shooters off the ball. Back to your point about Hart versus DiVincenzo and the difference that makes this year.
Rough weekend for the Knicks, man. Basically a almost 40-point loss to the Cavs on Friday night, followed up by this game, which looks closer than it actually was at 118 to 105, which is not a close game. That's actually closer than it actually probably was when you look at the totality.
Yeah, if you're the Knicks, you're like, we got it to 4 at one point. Okay, got it to 4.
I mean, like I said, this is the same script as the last game. They cut it to 2 at one point, and that game ended up being a 30-point game as well, or a 20-point game, whatever it was, with that final score. And so, I had Macri on here, our guy, trying to set up the Knicks game. And, I was trying to throw a bone, like, I still respect the Knicks. They could, if this and that happens, went onto the dime with our guys, Josh and Quab, same thing. I tried to throw a bone. I don't know how you look at this weekend of games and just not go, listen, this is going to be a fun ride for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, but we ain't getting by the Cavs and Celtics right now. Like, there would have to be multiple disastrous injuries for the Knicks to make any type of noise. Just from looking at these last two games, I just don't see how it's going to be possible. And maybe that was always what was going to happen after the Karl Anthony Towns trade. After you give up so many depth resources, right, to make the moves that you did, maybe this was always going to be year 2 and not year 1. And this is kind of like, let's figure out who this team is and what we need. And based on the margins we have to operate, how do we fill that in? Maybe that's what it is, but it certainly seems like this year is not going to be the year for the Knicks. So yeah, it's a tough weekend for them. On the flip side, the Celtics have continued their momentum from before the break, right? Like this is looking like a championship level team. And even when the Knicks cut this to 2, championship level response to get that right back up to 12 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
To go on that run that they had, and just an all around game. I'm going to go through the starting 5 here because this was a game that everyone contributed. So let's just go up and down here. I'll start with Jrue Holiday, 14 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, and a block, filling it up top to bottom. Derek White, 19 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, and a steal. Kristaps Porzingis, 15 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks. Jason Tatum, so close to back-to-back triple doubles, 25 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. Jaylen Brown, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Just a game where the Celtics' totality of their talent just overpowered the Knicks in this game. They just, anytime they had their big 5, and also the Celtics bench played well. Specifically, Luke Kornet and Al Horford, I thought were very good in this game. Mm-hmm. You could just tell when the Celtics had their starting 5 out there, the Knicks had no answers, and the Celtics have an answer for everything the Knicks do.
Yeah, and Jrue Holiday, to your point, he just looks much better at this. Coming back from that 2 weeks off, he looks rejuvenated. The ball pressure that he's putting on a Jalen Brunson for 48 minutes whenever he's guarding him, that's the Jrue Holiday that's special when he's freelancing on the backside of that defense. He's taking away cutters, and then he's switching out onto the perimeter. At one point, the announcers were like, "How many Jrue Holidays are out there on the court?" And I thought that's the Jrue Holiday that we saw
last year. Haven't seen that in
a
while.
No, we haven't seen that in a while. And against a team like the Knicks, where Jrue Holiday, one possession, is guarding Jalen Brunson and fighting over a screen, high pick and roll, recovering out to Karl Anthony Towns. And then he's covering Towns one-on-one isolation on the block and, giving Towns fits. And then he's switching out onto OG Anunoby. He's doing everything that you want from Jrue Holiday. And that just goes to show you, you can't be prisoner of the moment before the All-Star break, especially coming off of a championship and an Olympic run with a veteran like Jrue Holiday, because he still can bring it, right? Jrue Holiday was the best player on the court for the first quarter of the closeout game against the Dallas Mavericks. And like that level of energy from the jump in this game, the Celtics came out with so much energy, great defense leading to transition opportunities on offense. And they doubled up the Knicks in the first quarter. And it all started with Jrue and Derek White at the head of the snake there.
You think Tommy Heinsohn's smiling at this game from above right now?
Run!
Get out and run! That's all I could think about with all these transition buckets, all the leak outs. I was like, this is everything Tommy wanted when he was calling those brutal games in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, and he's screaming.
You've got fresh legs. You're young. Run, run. Give the ball to Walter in the corner. Run.
This is the vision Tommy Heinsohn would have loved to have seen. Was this team today. And, like you said, the versatility of Jrue, I think the versatility of Tatum defensively too. Like Tatum was guarding Karl Anthony Towns for most of this game, for good portions of it. And the fact that you have, and this is the other thing that really stood out is defensively, and you touched on it, and we mentioned this last episode as well. When this team is really locked in, the communication, the scramming, the switching, it's just so locked in, especially off ball. I was noticing it a lot today of just being able to pass off one guy to another and always finding what the best matchup is in your area so that you always kind of remain connected. This team just throughout the game, the Knicks, there is no killer whale offense to play against the Celtics because they will live with just about every matchup. Maybe Karl Anthony Towns on Derek White in the post, if we're looking at just the starting 5, that's maybe the only one that you might be like, okay, this is something to attack. But even then, getting to that because of the communication and the way that the Celtics continue to switch, even on the backside, you don't see that matchup happen. And so from the beginning, like you said, it felt like the Celtics were just absolutely connected on that front. And if you watch it, even just off ball, like sometimes I would get lost just seeing how they're communicating on the backside. it's so impressive, and that's when it becomes really difficult for a team like the Knicks, even when you have Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, which is maybe the best pick and roll game, pick and roll, pick and pop game in the NBA potentially. That's just not enough. And then you need those guys to step up. And Josh Hart had 20 points, but almost at a detriment because of all the things that we laid out here. So I don't know what the Knicks do, but for the Celtics, this is very encouraging to see them hitting their stride like this, and especially in these games that could be, theoretically these big games, as they are the 2 seed, Knicks the 3 seed now, I believe 3 games or potentially 4 games back now. So Celtics putting some distance between themselves and the Knicks here as we go forward. Greg, just looking through the box score here, just some other things that I wanted to call out. Like I said, Jason Tatum, almost back-to-back triple doubles. I was really thinking he was going to get it there towards the end. Couldn't quite get that last assist, but just the dominance of Jason Tatum versus the Knicks. It's undeniable that he kind of owns the Knicks right now. Even though you did mention OG stepped up for a little bit in that third quarter to give him a little bit of issues.
He's playing like an MVP right now, man. Just to read off his box score: 8 for 20 from the field, 3 for 10 from 3, 6 for 6 from the line, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 steals, only 3 turnovers, and plus 12 on the night to go along with those 25 points. But I think, Tatum's growth as a playmaker, just the efficiency that we're seeing him make the reads on the pick and roll, the cross court passes that he's able to make because he can see over the defense at 6'9". He's really turning into something special as a creator on offense, man.
Yeah.
We said it on the last pod. I don't want to beat a dead Karl Anthony Towns, but that's kind of what Jason Tatum has been doing every single time we play the Knicks. He just sees Towns in front of him and he just he has the most confidence I've ever seen him play with going up against Karl Anthony Towns. He just sees barbecue chicken all over the court. And then Jalen, I think Jalen kind of struggled a little bit to start this game, really found his rhythm. He was the engine that really helped the Celtics bounce back when the lead got cut to 4. Tatum's on the bench to start the fourth quarter. I thought Jalen did a good job kind of meeting the moment, getting out in transition, had a great offense, defense, layup on one end, sprints back on the other end, boxes out Precious Achiuwa for a rebound, and then just flexes to the crowd.
He was hype on that one. Yeah, he was real hype on that.
Hype on a box out. That's the type of stuff you want. Have you watched the Netflix documentary yet? The Court of Gold documentary?
The Court of Gold? Yeah, I finished it this weekend.
Okay. I haven't finished it all, but in that first or second episode, when Steve Kerr is talking to Anthony Edwards and he's talking about what's going to take him to that next level and doing all the little things, the little shit. He's like, when you were a tailback in high school, when is that going to translate to rebounding? Yeah. That was the moment right there. That was the moment that Steve Kerr was referring to when Jaylen Brown boxes out Precious Achiuwa, takes so much pride in that box out, flexes to the crowd because he knows all the work that has been culminating to a February 23rd Sunday afternoon game against the New York Knicks. It was all because of the 7 years of work he put in prior to build his body up to that point where he can bang with the Precious Achiuwa and not even get the rebound, just get the box out.
Right. I think Luke ended up getting it or somebody, but yeah, exactly. That was one of my favorite scenes of the Court of Gold documentary. Actually, I really that was something where I was like, "Ooh, this is really cool to see," especially because it's not his coach. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of cool to see that connectivity. But yeah, I think that's a great example of all the work being put in and then being paid off. Anyone else in this game that you want to touch on? Because I know we're going to get to in or out and stat of the week, and then I've got one thing in between that I want to spring on you and bring up as a quick discussion. But anything else from this game that stood out to you?
I just think the continued double big lineup that the Celtics are going to, whether it's Kornet and Porzingis or Horford and Kornet. This is something I would, on the Richard White podcast that we did, this is what I was begging for. It's just, I was saying the starting lineup, but Jrue Holiday, if he's playing like this, you don't switch that.
Right. This was at a different time where we were much more concerned about Jrue Holiday.
Right. And it wasn't even as a long-term thing. It was while Jrue Holiday is struggling, maybe you move him to the bench. And instead they just said, hey, Jrue, take 2 weeks off. Right. So but it's the same idea, going double big in today's NBA. When you look around how every team is just huge across the board, you have to be able to size up. And when the Celtics can put out a lineup, at one point they had Kornet, they had Porzingis, they had Tatum, they had Holiday and White. Right, that's a huge team out there. Holiday is a beefy 6'4", Derek White 6'4", 6'5", Tatum at the 3. Give me more Tatum at the 3 lineups. Like, I love seeing Tatum at the 3 just because it makes the Celtics so dominant on the glass.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see. I mean, I think from dominating the glass and just being as big as you can possibly be, Holiday, the Jays, Luke, and KP is an interesting combination of a team. I don't know that we've seen that 5-man out there. Probably switch out Luke for Al. I'm sure we've seen that at some point. But that's to your point, really big team, really aggressive team on the glass. Certainly going to be protecting the paint when it comes to that. Luke, another very aggressive game on the offensive boards. Just 3 offensive rebounds in this game in under 14 minutes for Luke Cornett. Luke just continues to be an absolute stud, being the star in his role as Brad Stevens always talks about. But a big win here for the Celtics. Again, 118-105. Now 3-0 against the Knicks on the season. For the Knicks on the flip side, now 0-7 against the Celtics, Cavaliers, and Thunder. Not really the way to put yourself into championship conversation. Greg, before we get to our segments here, one thing that I did want to bring up, and this plays off Jason Tatum nearly going back-to-back here with the triple-double, is earlier this week he made some comments, and it goes along with Court of Gold as well too, which not a lot. If you guys are tuning in for some Tatum content, I'm gonna tell you right now, save your time. He's not really in the thing. But Jason Tatum earlier this week talked about wanting to be viewed as what you're seeing in that documentary from Durant, Steph, and LeBron, who it mostly focuses on. Got back to some of the comments that he made earlier in this year and talked a little bit more about wanting to catch Larry Bird as the best Celtic of all time. We can debate whether it's Larry Bird or Bill. Those are the top 2. I think no one's going to debate that those are the top 2. You can figure out who you think is number 1. And that's an interesting thought of can Tatum, catch that Larry Bird level. That's a little bit longer down the road. What I want to ask you, Greg, is right now, February 23rd, 2025, has Jason Tatum already caught and or passed Paul Pierce in Celtics history?
No.
Really? Okay, I stand on the other side. Let's talk it out.
Oh, you think he's already passed him? I think like Tatum is a better player. Like the ceiling of Jason Tatum versus Paul Pierce, he's just better than Paul Pierce was.
Mm-hmm.
But to be fair to Paul Pierce, he wasn't given a team like this around him early in his career. When he finally got the chance to be surrounded by greatness, Paul Pierce was in his late 20s, early 30s, right? I think he may have been either 29 or 30 when he joined forces with KG and Ray Allen. So Jason Tatum has had the benefit of having great teams around him from the jump. And if you put a young Paul Pierce,
he was 30 during that first season. So yeah.
So if you put a young Paul Pierce in Jason Tatum's shoes, Paul Pierce was a problem, dude. Like Paul Pierce was pretty amazing early on in his career. And if you just switch places with them, I don't know necessarily that you can make the argument that Paul Pierce wouldn't have been just as good as Jason Tatum in that situation.
If they switch places, yes, there's definitely an argument. And obviously, I am not trying to slander Paul in this conversation. But Jason Tatum has now been first team All-NBA 3 straight years in a row, about to be 4th here. Paul Pierce has been on the All-NBA second team 1 time, been on All-NBA third team 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Tatum's got 1, 3 first, about to be 4. And Tatum is in that top 5 conversation, right? Like I think this is the year where there's no more, scuttlebutt on the outside that he's not top 5. Like he's been hovering around that top 5 conversation for 2 years. To some people, he's been in for a couple years, like us. Everybody has him in that top 5 now. I love Paul Pierce. Paul Pierce finished inside the top 10 MVP voting 1 time in his entire career. Granted, it was, like you said, to your point, when he had a better team around him, which he did not have in those early years. But and who knows how the team results play out this year for Jason Tatum. He's going to make first team All-NBA, right? Like that's going to be his 4th first team All-NBA. Even if the Celtics don't make it to the championship, he's been twice. He's been, won the finals once. That matches up with Paul. Like Paul never hit the heights that Jason Tatum has hit in the last 3 years. And so, Paul Pierce has the longevity. He's got a little bit more total points right now. But if for some reason Jason Tatum ended his career as a Celtic right now, the first team All-NBAs, the peaks, like to me, that goes to Jason Tatum. Like I actually think I wouldn't be like, I'm not going to sit here and press you on this because I don't think it's unreasonable to say he hasn't passed Paul Pierce yet. Paul Pierce is a fucking Celtic legend. When you do Mount Rushmore of Celtics, it's Bill Russell, it's Larry. Those are locked. I think Havlicek, I would say, is probably locked at that third spot. And then that fourth spot, you have 19 different Hall of Famers with guys like Bob Cousy and Paul Pierce, in my opinion, probably leading the way. And now Jason Tatum is in that mix and potentially is getting closer and closer to cementing his spot on that fourth part of Mount Rushmore in Celtics lore, removing coaches. So, of course, no Red Auerbach in this conversation, just strictly players. It's just an interesting thing to think about as Jason Tatum is so hyper aware of legacy. Is that I think him and Paul Pierce it's just a real question. That's what it ultimately comes down to. There's no wrong answer right now, but I think it's a real question.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the first team All-NBA argument, right? And Tatum right now now it's different because it's just front court and back court, right? Or it's top 5. It's just top 5.
Well, just as of last year, it changed.
Yeah,
so now it's just positionless. But before that, his first 2 years, it was the same as it was for Paul, where it's like front court, back court.
Right. And just thinking about, so it was 2 forwards and a center, right? So Jason Tatum's going up against the likes of Kevin Durant, LeBron James late in his career. It's Kevin Durant late in his career. Kawhi Leonard's always hurt, right? You can make a bunch of arguments there. And you just think about like the players that Paul Pierce was going up against, like 98, 99 first teams, Duncan and Malone. 99, 2000 first team is Duncan and Garnett. 2000, 2001, it's Duncan and Weber. 2001, 2002, it's Duncan and McGrady. In 2002, 2003, Duncan and Garnett. You know, like Duncan and Garnett, 2003, 2004. Duncan and Nowitzki. It's just like those guys.
I wonder if they classified Paul as a and
he was a forward. He's a forward.
Now. Okay, he was listed as a forward.
Listed as a forward.
Because on those, I'm assuming Kobe's listed as a guard, right?
Yeah, and Kobe
and T-Mac.
T-Mac's listed as a forward. Pierce is listed as a forward. Kobe's listed as a shooting guard. So he's going up against all of the, like, that was a dominant front court era of the NBA. All of those guys in their prime, right? So like maybe there's an argument if he's listed as a guard, he might be able to get into some more spots because he's going up against
second teams instead of third teams or whatever.
Yeah. So I think the first team All-NBA, I think that's a great thing to put on Jason Tatum's resume. But as a head-to-head comparison between the two and their greatness, I don't necessarily know that that's fair to Paul, considering the guys he was going up against first.
Different eras. That's why it's a conversation, right? Because it's different eras, the different timelines, different teams. The teams being, incredibly different. Jason Tatum's has had one bad team his entire career, right? The year that they ended up in the play-in, and then Jaylen Brown gets hurt at the end of the season. That's the only team that you can even qualify as not a championship contender-ish team, even if it's borderline, is that 1 year. So, interesting conversation though. But I always do think it's fascinating how much Jason Tatum is, and this is part of him being so well groomed, right, as to be a modern superstar. And it's part of, when we went to the Bill Simmons podcast, they were talking about he has got a little Tim Duncanism to him, where I think a lot of the general public finds him a little bit boring because he is so well put together, and not that he's inauthentic, but he's not as brash as like maybe an Anthony Edwards, or as Kevin Durant and LeBron get older and they just say fuck it, and they're just like, what are you going to tell me now? I've done too much. You can't say anything. Like Tatum is still very much like, family man, here's my persona, here's my portfolio that I have for you right now with all my deals. Like, I'm not messing up my bag. And so it's just different, but it's an interesting conversation. And I think as Tatum continues to talk about it, it'll be something that comes up a little bit more. But, you love somebody that's striving for greatness, and he's certainly on that path. Another almost triple-double here in this game today. With that, Greg, let's go to our segments this week. And do you want to start with in or out? Or do you want to go to stat of the week first? What's in your bag today?
Let's go stat of the week.
All right, let's do stat of the week. Go ahead and lead us off, since you are the birthday boy.
Okay. I'm going to steal this directly from Dick Lipe on Twitter. So he says, in the 3 first quarters against the Knicks this season, the Celtics have outscored the Knicks by 49 points. Let me repeat that. In the first 3 quarters against the Knicks this season, the Celtics have outscored the Knicks by 49 points, 111 to 62, averaging 37 points, 57% from the field and 51% on 3-pointers. There's just no way you can come back from that. And this is the Celtics team from last year that would come out and just hammer people in the first quarter, and they were up 20 at the end of so many first quarters last year. Like, this is what they're doing against the Knicks every time they play them.
Right. And then you get a little bit of daylight where you think you can come back, but it's one of those things that we've seen it for years. When a team has to play with desperation and climb out of that hole, you're gonna run out of that desperation energy at some point. And then when the Celtics hit 3 threes in a row and they bring it from 2 to 11, and you're like gassed, you got nothing left. Your spirits are disheveled, right? Like you just got nothing. So when you put yourself in the type of hole against a team like this that's so well rounded, as we went through the box score today, you're shooting yourself in the foot before you even have a chance to really get to the middle of the fight, right? Like your hands are down and you're getting clocked in the face just from the beginning.
Yeah, it's straight up cheddar bobbing yourself.
100% hitting them with the Plaxico. There's not much you can do right there in that situation. I saw some of those stats going around. I think at the halftime or something, it was like through 2.5 games, it's a plus 69 or something. Like at that point before they started the third quarter, it just feels like with this particular matchup, the Knicks are a target version maybe of the Celtics, right? They're just a cheaper version of the Celtics, with their defense being nowhere near the same standards on that end. But offensively, they try to be a target version of the Celtics, and then defensively, I don't know, man. You're food stamps. I don't know how low you're going, but it's a world of difference on that side. But yeah, fascinating stats to see the difference here. For myself, I'm actually sticking with Jason Tatum, and I kind of figured he was going to have a big game tonight. So wanted to stay on that same Jason Tatum path. And again, 9 assists tonight, almost back-to-back triple doubles. So I was looking at his passing this year, and amongst forwards, he's now become one of the elite members of that category. So here's a couple of stats I'm just going to rip off for you here, Greg. Amongst forwards in the league right now, so this is LeBron, Luka, Scotty Barnes, a whole bunch of guys that are in this category. He's 5th in total passes. He's 3rd in secondary assists, so that hockey pass that we always talk about. Fun fact, JB is 4th in that category as far as secondary assists go. He's 5th in potential assists on the season at 11.5, and then 5th in adjusted assists at 7.1, right around 6 assists total for Jason Tatum on the season. But this is just playing into the entire narrative that we've been talking about since earlier in the year, that Tatum has leveled up his game now to really be almost on a nightly basis. You're expecting as the bare minimum 27, 7, and 7. That's becoming the new, that's a Jason Tatum game. I'm not surprised, right? There's no, this stands out. That's what you get when you play the Celtics. And so to see Tatum be, among all forwards, to be, at the top of all of those categories, it just speaks once again to just the evolution of what we're seeing here, and him being, right back. I don't know if he's going to get fully back into this MVP race here with Jokic and SGA, but he's at least making a case. And I think we'll see, based on team success, if the Thunder start to slip a little bit, maybe there's a chance for him to get back in. But he's certainly putting himself, I think, in a position now where I would say he's probably past Giannis at this point. We'll see. But yeah, I would say he has. And he's at least given himself, with 25, 26, 27 games left here, a fighting chance of getting into that top 2 discussion.
Yeah, I mentioned this on the last pod, but Jason Tatum, potential assists over his last 15, not including today's game against the Knicks. We don't have those numbers yet.
Yeah.
But 12.5 potential assists over his last 15, 13.4 potential assists over his last 10.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's also almost like 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, about 6 to 2.5 right now. Shout out to Jaylen Brown too, man. Him being being 4th, in secondary assists. That kind of caught me by surprise. But for years he's been 1-to-1 in that assist to turnover ratio. This year he's 2-to-1, right? So that's a massive improvement for his game. So when you have 2 guys that are able to draw in the defense and then make those plays. And I think they did a good job in the broadcast today talking about how, Tatum is okay with drawing in the defense and then letting someone else make a play, whether it's Derek White making the extra pass or whatever it might be. And that's why he's 3rd in those secondary assists. So Jason Tatum's passing just continues to grow and grow. And yeah, it's going to be a big reason if the Celtics are able to pull this off here and go back to back. Going to be one of the major catalysts for that. Greg, let's go to in or out today. What do you have for us?
I want to talk about the Court of Gold documentary, or if you've already watched White Lotus, we could talk about White Lotus. But I know you might not.
I've been saving that. The wifey just got back from her Hawaii trip for work, so we're gonna after we knock this out here, we got some Severance and White Lotus on the docket for this afternoon, which I'm pretty excited about for both of those.
Okay,
so we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we can talk about Court of Gold then. I'm in on this documentary. When you compare this head to head with the Netflix Starting 5 documentary, it's just ahead. Like miles ahead, world of difference. Like this is
I actually finished this one.
Yeah, this is an actual documentary versus like a puff piece, fluff piece, whatever they call it. Yeah. I think it's puff piece. The way that they're able to get the behind the scenes access and not sugarcoat anything that you're seeing. Like the Netflix documentary was just as sugar-coated as possible. It was
fucking infomercial. Yeah.
It was an infomercial. It was eating like 12 donuts at once, whatever, washed down with a iced coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. Like it was so over the top, sugar-coated. In this documentary, it was nice to actually see some journalism in there. You get to see the real raw emotion of the players. They do a nice job of picking some people like Bam Adebayo, the whole episode where you learn about his background growing up in the trailer with his mom. Like little things like that are so important for the casual NBA fan and even diehard NBA fans like us, just to remember that these guys are human beings. And then to see the competitive nature from all four programs, like the Nick Batum scene where he's in the locker room, just like ripping his guys a new asshole. That scene is great.
I didn't realize how much of a leader he was on that team.
And I didn't know about his past where his dad was a professional basketball player that died while he was in the stands at 3 years old. Like that shit is just, it's so powerful to see that. And I really enjoyed the documentary. I haven't finished it yet. I got through 4 episodes, but overall I am in on the Court of Gold documentary. I'm very excited as well for the Celtics documentary that's coming out on March 3rd.
Yeah, that was cool seeing everybody was in Boston for the premiere. It looked like this past week. I will push back a little bit because I'm in overall. I think in general, I'm kind of out on these 6-part documentaries. Like, can we just go back to having a 2.5 hour documentary of like one? Like the Bam Adebayo story to me was nice. I don't think it really pushed the narrative. Like it was good information to know. I don't think it really did anything for the documentary. To me, it was a little bit of just filling time, even though it was interesting information. So there's a few pieces of there. Like I finished it, and I know, like I think the last 2 episodes are really awesome. Like I think for me, it was like episodes 1, 5, and 6 are like the meat of your documentary, and like the 2, 3, 4 episodes could have been shrunk down to like a half hour, 35 minutes that just kind of fill the gap between the games and moments that matter at the end. Like the setup of episode 1 was awesome. I just think 2, 3, and 4 was a little bit of fluff, but it really paid off because 5 and 6 were awesome. And to your point, some of the access they got was great because this isn't giving anything away, but at one point they were in the locker room with Serbia and the coach tells them to get the fuck out because they were like yelling at their players. I was like, this is awesome. Like I've never seen this before. And you said you got through what? You got 2 episodes left?
Yes, 2 episodes left.
Okay. Have they talked about Evan Fournier's relationship with the France head coach yet?
I think I may have tuned out a little bit on that part just because I'm not like a huge Evan Fournier guy. I don't know that I was super locked in on that. I was wondering, what were your thoughts on the Dylan Brooks segment?
So the 2 pieces that jumped to my head of just like completely unnecessary were the Bam and Dylan Brooks parts. Like I was just like, this is just to fill time to give yourself 40 minutes for an episode. Yeah, that's all that was to me. As his family was a lot whiter than I expected. I don't know what that says about me, but I was like, there's a lot of really, really white people here. I don't know. I just didn't see like any black people at the table, basically. So I was a little confused. It's like, I don't know what's happening here. Nor did I care to really investigate Dylan Brooks' family background. So those are the parts to me where I was just like, this could have been a quick segment of like, look at what they do. And 30 seconds later, we're off. But overall, the access is great. The Evan Fournier part where I didn't realize him and his coach are like openly beefing during the Olympics. So I think maybe that's episode 5 that will come up, or maybe it touched on it a little bit in episode 4. That was actually super interesting to me because I didn't know that there was like all these comments being made very publicly in the media of the two of them, like just arguing. I was like, oh shit, I thought you guys were like united, like Le Blues or whatever, like, you know, trying to go hard for Team France. And it was cool that they were back at, so they end up back at like their training facility they all were at as like kids at different points. Like, so yeah, it was, dude, overall, the access is great. The Serbia team's a lot of fun, especially when you get to them after they win the bronze medal. They're a lot of fun, being very open about how much they were partying afterwards. It's good times. Yeah, Quarter Gold, highly recommend checking it out. Even with a little bit of fluff, definitely in, way better than Starting Five. That the next season, which I think is being filmed right now, which I think Jaylen Brown's a part of the new season of Starting Five or whatever. They got to really, I'll give them an episode to see if they've learned from last time. But if it doesn't suck me in, I don't think I'm gonna give that a second.
They got to change the beats of that documentary.
Yeah, that was a little tough. Okay, cool. I'll go to my in or out. So this past weekend to the Spurs were here in Austin, Texas, in our backyard. So of course we had to go to the game. They played the Pistons. Obviously, the unfortunate news of Victor Wembanyama hit just a few days before that. So no Wemby, a little disappointing, but got to see a pretty fun game between the Spurs and the Pistons. Eventually, the Pistons really ran away with it. But Greg, I'm out on just Ubers leaving events, man. It's such a shit show. We've got to figure out a better way. And I should have thought more about having a proposal for how we fix it. Because no matter what event you go to, like, this is one of the reasons that I almost don't want to go to a lot of major events that, like, this stage of my life, is just I'm already dreading what it's going to be like getting in and getting out of these places. Because when you're there, like, it was awesome. Great experience. The Moody Center is a really nice arena. It's really easy to get to everything. They constantly have, like, I don't really feel like there's ever been too many like long lines that I've waited in there for anything. Like, they do a really efficient job. But getting in and getting out, man, and getting in wasn't terrible. Getting in was pretty fine. But getting out, man, when the whole crowd is leaving, it's just a disaster. Prices are out of control. People are scrambled everywhere. You got guys trying to, you know, sell you like black market taxis, and it's just no one's having a good time. No one's having a good time. There has to be a better way. So I don't know what it is, Greg. Maybe you have an idea, but this is more of a plea to the audience. Can somebody come up with a better way that we as fans attending concerts and sporting events are able to get out of these places? Because it's the number one thing that keeps me from wanting to go to more live events, is the hassle of leaving these places.
Yeah, and I think Boston is kind of unique as like a counter argument to this, because the public transportation is actually accessible. Like here in Austin, there's just no public transportation that you can take. Leaving a Red Sox game, you can hop on the T.
Even that's tough, though. Do you remember the last time you've been like sandwiched with everyone who's like drunk and sweating? Like it's still not a great. I
mean, but that's the nature. That's what you're signing up for when you go to an event like this. Like, part of it is signing up for, okay, what is the plan after the game? Because we don't want to be stuck in this. It's going to contribute to the bar economy all around there. But what you don't want is what happened with me and you, is we were already planning our exit strategy for the game, where we didn't even want to stay towards the end of the game. It ended up being a blowout, but we were thinking about it, like, do we leave, you know, with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, 3 minutes left? Like, you want your fans to stay there as long as possible and stay to the end of the game without having to worry about your exit strategy. So I agree with you on that. And maybe it's on us though, man. Like, you know, we can always point the finger, but you know, when you point one finger, there's 4 pointing right back at you, my man. And what could we have done better there in that situation? Maybe we plan to go out. Maybe we go to the Shaky Graves concert that they had so nicely put together for us. Like, there were plenty of things that we could have done. But I agree overall with your point. It is a hassle, but I think you're signing up for that when you go to an event. But it does not feel great, as you know, in our mid 30s now. I think when you're early 20s, it's a little bit easier to deal with. When you're probably a little bit later in life, it might be a little bit easier to deal with, because, you know, you're getting away from the kids for the night. This is a thing that you're really looking forward to. We're kind of in that like stage where everything's sort of inconvenient for us.
Yeah, like most of our decisions are based on convenience. Like if people want to go to a bar, I'm like, what's the parking situation?
Yeah.
Like because I even this past weekend or 2 weekends ago went downtown for for lunch because we had some Valentine's Day plans that got ruined for the day after, and so we were like, oh, we can do it. And I was like, honestly, this is a good time to like. There's a restaurant here in town called Buenos Aires that I'd never been to. I was like, yeah, let's go check it out because like middle of the day, Saturday, it's a little bit cold out. Not many people are going to be there. Should be easier to find parking now than be like, hey, let's go out on a Friday, Saturday night to this nice restaurant and have dinner. Nah, fuck that. I got to be driving around. I got to figure out where to park. Then when we get out, everyone's at the bars. Like there's chaos down there. I don't need that in my life anymore. Like I think you're right. I think this is appropriate. It's your birthdays, right? So this is a reflection of where we are in life in our mid to late to mid 30s. Just needing convenience in our lives. That's the biggest thing that we can take away from this. But Greg, real quick before we get out of here, Celtics this week coming up here. It's going to be day off after tomorrow, and then it's a back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday, Toronto, Detroit, day off, and then Friday against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We will be live Friday morning right now, looking like hopefully we're going to have Brian Barrett from The Ringer joining us on Friday morning for Coffee and C's. So we'll let you know once that is all confirmed here later in the week. But I mentioned, Greg, we did see the Pistons. So real quick, scouting report on the Pistons for the Celtics coming up this week in that Wednesday game against the 6th seed Pistons, I should say.
Dude, I thought the Pistons were really impressive in that game. Their level of physicality that they have on both ends of the court. Cade Cunningham, as we said many times during the game, he reminded us a lot of Luka with his ability just to play at his pace the entire game, never seemingly moving more than half speed to get anywhere he wants on the court. Very similar to Tatum in his ability to play pick and roll, see over the defense, and make the right read almost every time. And then Duren, man, Jalen Duren was a guy that we were kind of ragging on a little bit during the game because he seems so
his clothes didn't fit. He was out of shape, and then he ended up with like 20 and 15.
It looked like he was wearing Wemby size clothes or something. Like his uniform did not fit him whatsoever. He was dragging up and down the court. He had played at one point, I think 5 minutes, and they had to like drag him off the court.
Beginning of the third quarter, I think, something like that.
Beginning of the third quarter, yeah. And then he comes back in and dominates at the end of the third quarter and in the fourth quarter with some of the best dunks I've ever seen live, where I, with not a rooting interest in the game, I got out of my seat and like turned around and did a spin move like, oh,
yeah, you grabbed my shoulder at one point, like, oh, like grab, just like an involuntary reaction.
Yeah, he was really impressive. So I think it'll be a good, if the Celtics don't take the Pistons seriously in that game, I think the Celtics will lose that game.
Yeah, I think that could be a game. I 100% see that being a game. Second night of a back-to-back, the Celtics potentially maybe sleepwalk through, and it's almost like for the Pistons that's a game for them where they're like, yo, put us on the fucking map. Like, make sure you recognize when you say Detroit Pistons are coming to town, this is a playoff team that's coming down. This isn't the same Pistons that it's been for the last 10-15 years, whatever it's been, since they've really been in contention. And so I think for them, that's going to be a game that they go all out for, that I could see the Celtics kind of falling, but ultimately that could be a team that the Celtics see in the first or second round of the playoffs. So I think for the Celtics, that will be a good wake-up call of, hey, listen, like Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, like those are two guys that are going to be super athletic that might give us some problems. Like we gotta be on our P's and Q's for this. So looking forward to that game this week. That'll be fun. And as I mentioned, Friday morning for Coffee and C's, we'll be able to discuss that game. Also, definitely do a little bit of a mini preview for that Cavaliers game later that night. But that's going to do it for us here on this episode. Again, the Celtics with a big 118-105 victory over the New York Knickerbockers, expanding their lead as the 2 seed here in the Eastern Conference. Greg, any final thoughts on this day of your birth? Any thought? Any? I'm gonna put some pressure on you here. Any words of wisdom here as you turn the calendar on another year?
Yeah, man. I think, birthdays, I think in the past, I've kind of ran away from the idea of a birthday and celebrating my birthday. I haven't really liked the idea of doing anything for myself. It's like I don't know. I don't know why I feel weird about it, but not necessarily existential by any means, but I just like don't want the attention on me for
No, it's a
something
little
that
weird. I get
I
it.
have no
Makes sense.
control over. Like it's just the day I was born. Like
Yeah.
to me, I didn't do anything special to get here, right? It was like all on my mom. Like shout out to my mom. I got to call my mom, by the way. And it like when we went out to the game the other night, which I really appreciate you taking me out to the game, it just made me realize like I want to moving forward because I don't know how many more birthdays I'm going to get. Like anything can happen at any time. I just really want to appreciate those moments and appreciate those moments where I can treat myself, I can spend time, I can be a little bit selfish on those days. Like today you were supposed to come over and babysit and Danielle and I are supposed to go out, and then I really asked myself, did I want to go out to the movies? Did I want to go out, or did I want to spend time with James, my heir, my son, James of the bluest eyes? And I decided, what I really wanted to do was just have a day at home with Danielle and James. And that's what I wanted to do. And I just texted you. I was like, hey man, I'm going to do a little rain check on that. Here's what I want to do. And I'm trying to get to that point in my life where I can say, here's what I want to do, even if that thing is just sitting on the couch and hanging out with my son all day.
Yeah, and we're across town. You still got that invite anytime. So we'll lock that down for you. But some wise words there appreciated on my guy's 36th birthday. Still plugging along here, making sure that you guys out there get your content. So as a birthday request, make sure that you guys go to our YouTube page, subscribe, give us a like, give us a couple star review here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Or I hope 5-star, not a couple star review, a 5-star review.
Yeah, 5-star review. My bad. I haven't done this in a while where I've asked for this. So this is because of your birthday.
Leave us a star, bring our rating down.
Yeah, no, don't give us a star. Give us 5.
We haven't gotten a review in a while, right? So please, as a birthday gift to me, I just talked about how I'm going to try and be a little bit more selfish. Please, if you're listening, tell a friend about the show. Like a YouTube video, drop a comment on a YouTube video, follow us on all the social media at Green Envy Pod, and please leave us a 5-star review with some kind words. And, if you want to just like get our engagement up and you really don't like us that much, but you're listening, you hate listening to us, feel free to drop a comment to drive some engagement. We had a few negative comments out there.
Tell us what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
We're open to feedback. We're open to criticism. CelticsNoise@gmail.com. Email it to us at Green Envy Pod. Slide in the DMs. Any and all engagement and feedback is appreciated. Greg, go enjoy the rest of your birthday with your heir, and we will catch you guys later this week. Deuces.